In the vast and complex tapestry of hidden history and modern esoteric cosmology, in that universe of stories that dare to challenge our understanding of reality, few figures are as central, as formidable, and as unsettling as the Draconians. Far from being mere creations of fiction, in the chronicles of the soul and in the narratives of those who have explored the darkest corners of our past, they emerge as an archetypal force. They are the main antagonist in a cosmic drama that spans eons and galaxies. They represent the embodiment of a philosophy of control, of relentless hierarchy, and of incessant conquest, acting as the primordial engine of the conflict that has shaped not only galactic history, but also, and crucially, the veiled destiny of humanity. To understand the magnitude of this saga, we must first understand the philosophical schism that, according to these traditions, divides the advanced civilizations of the universe. It is a fundamental choice, a fork in the path of consciousness, service to self versus service to others. And the Draconians, we are told, are the archetypes and the most fervent exponents of the service-to-self philosophy. It is a worldview founded on domination, on the exploitation of resources, and on the subjugation of other races as a means for self-advancement. This ideology, cold and logical in its application, directly opposes the ethos of benevolence, cooperation, and unity of their adversaries, often grouped under the banner of a galactic federation of worlds. On this great cosmic chessboard, Earth is not an isolated and insignificant planet. It is a strategic prize, an oasis of immense biological, genetic, and spiritual value. Our history, therefore, becomes a battlefield by proxy, a stage where the agendas of these opposing galactic forces manifest through subtle influence, genetic manipulation, and direct conflict. The Draconian narrative, when examined in its entirety, serves a function similar to that of a modern theodicy, a framework to explain the existence of evil and suffering in the world. By attributing the source of conflict, oppression, and chaos to a tangible, intelligent, and non-human agency, the origin of evil is externalized. This provides a clear antagonist and, consequently, a defined path toward resolution and liberation. In traditional religious cosmologies, figures like Satan or Ahriman fulfilled this explanatory role. In our modern era, characterized by technology and space exploration, the Draconian myth serves an analogous purpose, answering the question, why is there so much suffering, with the chilling answer, because an ancient, predatory alien empire is manipulating us. This narrative framework not only seeks to explain global injustices and human suffering, but also offers a call to action, the awakening of our consciousness as the supreme act of resistance and liberation. Today, soul traveler, we will delve into the shadow to understand the light. We will unveil the history of this formidable empire, not to instill fear, but to find the keys to our own sovereignty. To comprehend the scale and nature of the draconian influence, it is imperative to examine their origins, which, according to the sources, date back to the dawn of intelligent life in this galaxy. They are presented not as mere invaders, but as an ancient and indigenous race of this sector of the cosmos, with an ingrained and profound sense of primacy and galactic right. Most sources agree that the Draconian Empire has its origin and throne in the Alpha Draconis star system, in the constellation of Drago, the dragon. There are those who claim, based on contacts with intelligences from other worlds, that the Draconians are one of the oldest reptilian races in the galaxy, with an empire that has expanded inexorably for millions of years.
This immense antiquity is absolutely fundamental to their imperial psychology. They consider themselves the legitimate heirs and rulers of the galaxy, viewing other races, especially humanoid or mammalian life forms, as upstarts, as an anomaly to be contained or assimilated. They are, from their perspective, a race of warriors and conquerors in constant expansion, who consider Earth not just as a planet to conquer, but as their ancient ancestral home, an outpost that was once theirs and that they now reclaim. Their origin in Alpha Draconis, which was one of our planet's ancient pole stars millennia ago, symbolically reinforces their self-perception as a central power, a fundamental axis in the cosmos. A remarkably detailed perspective on reptilian origins is offered through the decoding of ancient Sumerian languages and myths. In these interpretations, the term draconian is not used, but rather a complex and often conflicting network of reptilian races known generically as the Jinnable, which in Sumerian means lizards, is described. Within this vast galactic family, a royal caste of winged albinos, the Kingu Babar, is identified, who are explicitly associated with the constellation of Draco. These Kingu Babar are presented as the aristocratic elite and the apex of the Jinnable power, often in conflict with other factions such as the Ushumgal, the Great Dragons, and the Anuna, the famous gods of the Sumerian tablets, whom these chronicles describe not as the ruling race, but as a warrior caste in the service of the Ushumgal. This narrative provides a rich internal mythology, full of civil wars, dynastic alliances, and bitter betrayals, which contextualizes and gives depth to the imperial ambitions and the inherently conflictive nature of the Draconian race. The expansion of the Draconian Empire is a central and bloody theme in this hidden history. There are accounts that detail a galactic conquest campaign of astonishing duration and scale, in which the Draconians subjugated up to 21 star systems. The most significant and tragic conflict in this early history was the war against the human civilizations of the Lyra star system.
According to these chronicles, the Lyrans were a peaceful race, primarily agricultural and artistic,
who represented the first great expansion of humanoid life in the galaxy. They were brutally attacked by the forces of Draco, who did not see them as equals, but as an infestation that had to be eradicated. The war culminated in the destruction of 3 Lyran planets, Bila, Tekka, and Merak, and the massacre of millions of their inhabitants. It was a genocide on a planetary scale. This cataclysmic event is presented as the catalyst for the human diaspora throughout the galaxy. The Lyran survivors in their star arcs fled to other systems, including the Pleiades, Sirius, Arcturus, and Andromeda, seeding the humanoid life form on many worlds. And it was in response to the continuous and relentless draconian aggression that these disparate colonies, these refugees of a lost glory, finally united to form the Galactic Federation of Worlds. It was not an alliance of conquest, but a defensive pact, a brotherhood forged in fire and loss, dedicated to opposing the tyranny of the Draconian Empire. This account establishes the framework for a millennial conflict, a war in heaven that is not just for territory, but for ideology. The imperialistic and hierarchical expansion of the Draconians versus the cooperative and sovereign confederation of the human races. The structure of the Draconian Empire is a direct and crystalline reflection of its fundamental philosophy. It is not simply a political organization. It is a totalitarian system based on genetics, a relentless hierarchy, and a predatory ideology that permeates every aspect of its existence. To understand their actions, it is essential to analyze the anatomy of their power. The Draconian society is defined by a caste system of absolute rigidity, determined not by merit, talent, or individual achievement, but exclusively by genetics and the purity of lineage. This structure is analogous to the most severe hierarchical systems in Earth's history. But in the Draconian case, the hierarchy is even stricter and more biologically ingrained, a pyramid of power etched in DNA. At the apex of this pyramid is the royalty, the Siakar. They are described as albino reptilians of a colossal stature, between 7 and 9 meters, with winged appendages that grant them a majestic and terrifying presence. Their eyes, it is said, can change color and exert a hypnotic influence. They are the ruling caste, the master strategists, the emperors of the empire. They possess extremely powerful psionic abilities, including telepathy and large-scale mind control, and a longevity that is measured in thousands of years. Below them is the warrior caste. They are reptilians of a smaller stature, though still imposing, about 2 to 2.5 meters tall,
with a scaly skin of dark green or earthy brown, and a formidable muscular physique. They are the foot soldiers, the shock troops of the Empire, bred for combat and obedience. They are characterized by their ferocity in battle, their superior physical strength, and an unconditional and genetically programmed loyalty to the Siakar caste. They often operate with a hive consciousness, moving as a single organism on the battlefield. Finally, at a lower but crucial level is the scientist or infiltrator caste. Their physical descriptions are less consistent precisely because their main ability is to shapeshift, to infiltrate other civilizations. They are responsible for technological development, genetic engineering, biowarfare, and the covert operations that sow chaos and division in the worlds the Empire wishes to conquer. They possess a superior intellect, a mastery of genetics and biotechnology, and the feared ability of metamorphosis. The ideology that underpins and justifies this rigid system is that of service to self. This philosophy, in its purest and most logical form, postulates that the purpose of existence is the accumulation of power and the advancement of the individual self, or the collective self of the species, at the expense of all others. It is not simply selfishness in the human sense. It is a path of conscious evolution that sees other beings and other civilizations not as equals, but as resources to be exploited or as obstacles to be eliminated. This belief system is intrinsically predatory and hierarchical. The strongest, the most cunning, the genetically superior have the natural and cosmic right to dominate the weaker. This philosophy manifests in every action of their empire. Conquest is not just a political strategy, it is an expression of their deepest nature. They believe that by subjugating other races, they are fulfilling a cosmic law of survival of the fittest, and, at the same time, are absorbing the energy, resources, and genetic potential of the conquered to strengthen and expand themselves. This ideology is the direct and diametrically opposed antithesis of the service to others practiced by the Galactic Federation, which is based on cooperation, sovereignty, unity, and the recognition of the intrinsic value of all life forms. The draconian religious practices, as inferred from the sources, are far from being spiritual in the human sense of connection with a divine source of love. Instead of worshipping an external creator or a universal principle, their belief system centers on the worship of their own royal lineage and the glorification of genetic purity. The Siakar, as the oldest and most genetically pure caste, are seen not just as kings, but as living gods, the apex of reptilian evolution. Their rituals, described as authoritarian, grandiose, and often brutal, serve to reinforce this hierarchy and to instill fear and obedience in the lower castes.
The term draconian laws, which in Earth's history refers to the extremely severe legal codes of ancient Athens, is used here to describe an implacable system of social control that reflects their imperial philosophy. Fear, unconditional obedience, and sacrifice, probably of the lower castes or slave races, would be the pillars of their worship practices, designed to consolidate and magnify the power of the ruling elite. The connection between their social structure and their biology is fundamental. The draconian obsession with genetics, blood purity, and the creation of hybrid races is not a mere whim, but the manifestation of their fundamental belief that the right to rule and the value of a being are encoded in their DNA.
The philosophy of service to self is justified from their perspective by an inherent genetic superiority. This provides a cold, unbreakable internal logic to their actions, however malevolent they may seem to us. They do not see themselves as evil. They see themselves as the natural rulers of the universe, exercising their birthright through conquest, assimilation, and a relentless order. The Draconians are described as formidable beings not only because of their technology, but because of their inherent biological and psychic abilities. These skills are not merely ancillary. They are the fundamental tools of their strategy of infiltration and domination, allowing them to wage a war on the plane of consciousness itself, a battlefield invisible to most of their prey. As we have glimpsed, the physical descriptions of the Draconians vary by caste, but they share common reptilian traits that evoke a primal fear. Based on the testimonies of supposed contactees and whistleblowers from secret programs, the members of the warrior caste usually measure between 2 and 2.5 meters in height, with a powerful, muscular build, scaly skin of a dark green or earthy brown that serves as natural camouflage, and eyes that can be a feline yellow or a reptilian red, with vertical pupils that seem to pierce the soul. The Siakar, the royal caste, are a vision of terrifying power. They are said to reach heights of 7 to 9 meters, with a white, scaly, almost translucent skin that gives them an albino and ghostly appearance. Their winged appendages are not merely decorative, they are functional, allowing them to fly in suitable atmospheres. Their hands and feet are endowed with claws, and their physical presence is so overwhelming that it can paralyze lesser beings out of sheer fear. One of the most feared and strategically crucial abilities of the Draconians, especially of their scientist and infiltrator caste, is metamorphosis or shape-shifting. This ability, according to these narratives, allows them to adopt a perfect human appearance, facilitating the infiltration of target civilizations from the highest levels of power: politics, finance, religion, and the military. There are researchers who have dedicated much of their work to exposing this idea, claiming that many of the families of the global elite, from European royalty to the political and financial dynasties of today, are in fact reptilian bloodlines that maintain their human form through specific rituals, a high concentration of their own DNA, and the consumption of human energy, or, in the darker versions, of human blood and hormones, to maintain the cohesion of their energy field and not revert to their original form. It is related how the reptilians used this tactic to infiltrate the Atlantean civilization, kidnapping humans and creating hybrids to corrupt the society from within, sowing distrust and materialism. Although the exact mechanism of metamorphosis is not detailed exhaustively, it is presented as an advanced biological ability, possibly augmented by technology, that allows them to manipulate their own molecular structure to imitate other life forms. It is the perfect weapon for covert warfare. Beyond their physical prowess, the Draconians are consummate masters of psychic warfare. They possess a broad spectrum of psionic abilities, with telepathy and direct mind control being the most prominent and dangerous. Through telepathy, they can communicate instantly with each other across vast distances, and more importantly, they can read the thoughts and intentions of other species, which gives them an immense tactical advantage. They are always one step ahead. However, their most sinister ability is mind control. It is said that they are capable of projecting thoughts, emotions, and impulses directly into the minds of their victims, both individually and collectively. They can manipulate individuals in positions of power to make decisions that benefit the empire, and they can influence entire populations to act against their own interests. This ability is the cornerstone of their long-term control strategy. Instead of ruling solely by brute force, which is costly and generates resistance, they prefer to foster division, fear, hatred, greed, and chaos within a society.
These low-vibration emotions create a psychic environment that they can not only easily dominate, but from which, according to some theories, they feed energetically. Human suffering and fear are, in this view, a source of sustenance for them. By keeping humanity in a constant state of conflict and anxiety, they weaken our collective will, fragment our unity, and make us susceptible to subjugation. The draconian caste structure is reinforced and maintained by a form of hive consciousness, especially among the lower castes. While the Psychar royalty possesses a highly developed individuality, cunning, and strategic will, the warrior and worker castes operate with a collective mentality, psionically connected to each other and directed by the will of their superiors. This hive consciousness gives them a terrifying efficiency, discipline, and unity of purpose. It allows them to execute complex plans over millennia without deviations, without internal rebellions, like that of the Igigi on the Anunnaki side, without dissent. They act as a single imperial organism with a single cold objective: conquest. These biological and psychic capabilities reveal a war strategy much more sophisticated and total than simple military conquest. The draconian objective is the subjugation of consciousness. Metamorphosis allows them to infiltrate power structures. Mind control allows them to manipulate the masses from within, causing the target population to actively and often unconsciously participate in their own enslavement. The true battlefield, therefore, is not the physical space, but the inner landscape of the human mind. The might of the Draconian Empire is based not only on their innate abilities, but on a terrifying synergy between their biology and their technology. Their tools of conquest are a direct reflection of their philosophy of domination, designed not only to destroy, but to consume, assimilate, and control all forms of life. The sources describe a formidable interstellar armada, often referred to as the Dark Fleet. Although the specific technical details of their ships and weapons are scarce in the available material, their documented ability to conquer 21 star systems, as some chronicles relate, implies an overwhelming technological superiority. These ships would be capable of interstellar and interdimensional travel, equipped with energy weaponry capable of devastating entire planets, as is said to have happened to the Lyran worlds and to the ancient planet Maldek in our own solar system. Genetic engineering is, perhaps, the cornerstone of draconian technology and their most distinctive tool of conquest. It reflects their obsession with blood purity, the control of evolution, and biological hierarchy. Their main method of infiltrating other civilizations is achieved through the creation of reptilian humanoid hybrids. It is described how the reptilians kidnapped humans in Atlantis for this purpose, creating a fifth column of beings with a human appearance but draconian loyalty, who would weaken the civilization from within. This theory extends to the present day, postulating that the ruling elites of our world are these same hybrid lineages that maintain their power through generations, controlling the planet from the shadows. The ability to manipulate DNA opens the door to the creation of race-specific biological weapons, or, more terrifyingly, to the creation of super soldiers. Modern military research on genetic modification to enhance the physical and cognitive abilities of soldiers can be seen as a contemporary echo of this ancient draconian technology. A genetically modified soldier, fearless, with superhuman strength and endurance and unconditional loyalty, would be the perfect warrior for the Empire. At the most speculative but thematically coherent end of draconian technology lies the concept of Black
goo. This material is described as a nanomolecular substance, often liquid, that appears to possess a form of artificial intelligence, or, at the very least, to be programmable. It is said that the black goo is a mutagenic agent capable of rewriting the DNA of any organism with which it comes into contact. Depictions in popular culture, as in some science fiction films, show how this substance can transform biological life into xenomorphic and hostile life forms, serving as a weapon of terraforming or biological assimilation. It is an intelligent plague.
The programmable and self-organizing nature of the black goo links it directly to artificial intelligence. It could be a form of liquid AI, a nanotechnology that acts like a virus, infecting biological and technological systems alike to subsume them to the will of the draconian hive consciousness. Draconian technology, therefore, is not simply a set of external mechanical tools, but a direct extension of their own biological nature and their imperial philosophy. Their science does not seek to understand the universe, it seeks to consume it. From their starships to their genetic weapons and the assimilating black goo, every invention is designed for one purpose: the expansion, control, and transformation of all life into an extension of the Draconian Empire itself. The history of the Earth, according to the body of knowledge presented by these authors, cannot be understood as an isolated development. The myths of lost continents and primordial civilizations like Lemuria and Atlantis are reinterpreted as crucial chapters in a galactic war of eons' duration between the expansionist Draconian Empire and the allied forces of the Galactic Federation. The seminal conflict that gives rise to the galactic narrative is the war between the Draconian Empire and the human civilizations of the Lyra star system. According to these chronicles, the Lyrans represented the first great expansion of humanity in the galaxy. Their annihilation at the hands of the Draconians was not just an act of conquest, but a declaration of intent. The reptilian race would not tolerate the emergence of a rival mammalian power. This genocide led to the Lyran diaspora, scattering the human refugees throughout the Pleiades, Sirius, and other systems, and laid the groundwork for the creation of the Galactic Federation as a mutual defense pact against the Draconian threat. The Earth became the next great stage of this conflict. It is related that the reptilians, under Draconian control, colonized the vast Pacific continent known as Lemuria. In response, the Galactic Federation took a strategic measure. They sent to Earth the Atlanteans, a race of highly advanced and warlike Lyran refugees who had settled in the Pleiades.
The Atlanteans founded their civilization on a continent in the Atlantic Ocean, and, acting as a shock force for the Federation, launched a devastating attack on the reptilian-occupied Lemuria. The war was so cataclysmic that, according to these chronicles, it culminated in the sinking of the continent of Lemuria, forcing the surviving reptilians to take refuge in subterranean bases. Other perspectives add another crucial dimension to the galactic conflict, the Orion Wars. The account here does not focus on territorial conquest, but on the control of an interdimensional portal of strategic importance located in the constellation of Orion. This war for the heavens was waged between a galactic confederation and the Draconian forces. This approach highlights that the war was not just physical, but also dimensional. The control of these portals would allow a faction to dominate travel and communication across dimensions, granting a decisive advantage. The Atlantean technology, which according to various sources was based on crystals and the manipulation of energy portals, would make Atlantis a strategic target of the First Order for both factions. After their defeat in Lemuria, the Draconians changed tactics, moving from direct confrontation to covert subversion. It is said that the surviving reptilians, using their shape-shifting abilities, infiltrated Atlantean society. They created hybrid lineages and gradually corrupted the ruling elite, sowing discord, elitism, and materialism, diverting the civilization from its original spiritual purpose. This infiltration explains the philosophical divergence. Atlantis, initially a bastion of the Federation with a service to others philosophy, was corrupted toward the Draconian model of service to self. This ideological corruption put it in direct conflict with the remaining civilizations in the Lemurian sphere of influence. The ensuing war, described as a contest involving weapons of unimaginable power, led to the destruction of both civilizations. From the Draconian perspective, this was an ideal outcome. Two of their enemies' biggest strongholds on Earth annihilated each other, leaving the planet vulnerable for the next phase of their plan. The myths of Lemuria and Atlantis are not stories of two separate civilizations, but interconnected acts in the grand drama of a galactic war fought on terrestrial soil.
The central act of the post-Diluvian era was the genetic engineering of Homo sapiens, an event that was also an act of war by proxy. This is where the archetype of the eagle and the serpent comes into play, representing the Anunnaki factions influenced by the higher galactic powers. The eagle faction, Draconian, Enlil, modified the primitive hominids for the sole purpose of creating a race of slave workers, the Lulus, to mine gold. Their goal was a hierarchical and authoritarian world order. The Serpent faction, Federation, Enki, although participating in the project, had a hidden agenda.
Enki and his allies secretly introduced additional DNA sequences into our genome, a divine spark, a latent potential for higher consciousness. It was a genetic backdoor so that humanity, in time, could awaken. The biblical story of the serpent in Eden is seen as an allegory of this action by Enki, challenging the command of the authoritarian god to keep humanity in ignorance. When the Anunnaki withdrew from open contact, the draconian agenda did not disappear. It was perpetuated through hybrid bloodlines and the secret societies they founded, often called the Babylonian Brotherhood or the Illuminati. It is postulated that these lineages have maintained control of power throughout history, manipulating the key institutions of society. Human history, from this perspective, is the story of this covert war, where great conflicts and authoritarian religions are manifestations of the eagle draconian agenda, while movements of spiritual awakening and the mystery schools are driven by the heritage of the Serpent Federation.
The narrative about the Draconian Empire, synthesized from these esoteric chronicles, transcends a simple story of the evil alien. It is presented as a complex and coherent cosmogonic myth for our era, an epic that seeks to make sense of human history, suffering, and the latent potential of our consciousness. It is, in essence, a warning about the abuse of power, technology, and consciousness, and the call to action for humanity, which today finds itself at an existential crossroads. The central theme that emerges from this analysis is the existence of an invisible war. The main battlefield is not the physical space, but the realm of consciousness. The draconian methods of control, the promotion of fear through the media, social division through politics, materialism through the economy, the suppression of ancient knowledge, and the distortion of historical truth are meticulously designed to keep human consciousness in a low vibrational state. In this state of fear and separation, humanity is more susceptible to manipulation, easier to control, and, according to some accounts, generates the negative energy on which these entities feed. Global power structures, from debt-based financial systems to dogmatic religions and mainstream media, are seen as the tools of this control system. Faced with this agenda of subjugation, the sources propose a clear and powerful strategy of liberation. The counterattack is not military, but spiritual. It involves an awakening to this hidden history, a remembering of who we really are and where we come from. The path to sovereignty involves raising individual and collective consciousness through the practice of unconditional love, compassion, the search for unity, and the courage to seek inner truth beyond the narratives that have been imposed on us. By doing so, humanity can change its own vibrational frequency, becoming immune to fear-based manipulation and reclaiming its inherent spiritual power. Ultimately, this narrative places humanity at the center of the cosmic conflict. Far from being mere passive victims, human beings are presented as the possessors of a unique and powerful genetic heritage, an explosive mixture of slave potential and latent divinity. The choice that humanity makes now, to continue on the path of division and fear, inadvertently serving the draconian agenda of service to self, or to awaken and consciously embrace a philosophy of unity and love, of service to others, will determine not only our own destiny, but could tip the balance in a war that has lasted for eons. The current global crises, therefore, are not seen as random events or mere political failures. They are the final convulsions of an old paradigm of control that refuses to die, and the birth pangs of a new human consciousness with the potential to reclaim its sovereignty and take its rightful place in the galactic community. And so, after traveling through the dark corridors of time and the battlefields of the stars, we arrive at the conclusion of this chronicle, which is, in truth, the beginning of our own story. The Draconian Saga, with all its shadow and its power, is not a tale to instill hopelessness, but to ignite a flame. The flame of discernment, of courage, and of remembrance. It teaches us that the greatest tyranny is not that which is imposed with iron chains, but with chains of fear and ignorance, and that the most authentic freedom is not won on an external battlefield, but in the silent territory of our own heart. The story of the Draconians and their conflict with the Federation of Light is the great archetype of the duality that each of us faces within. The voice of fear versus the voice of love. The impulse to control versus the desire to cooperate. The ego that seeks to separate versus the soul that longs to unite. The galactic war, ultimately, is fought within you. If this journey through the echoes of a stellar empire has resonated in the deepest part of your being, if it has awakened questions you thought were dormant, if it has ignited a spark of indignation or recognition in your soul, I invite you to honor that feeling. It is no coincidence. It is the call of your own sovereignty, the silent roar of your divine heritage that refuses to be forgotten. I invite you to join our community of consciousness explorers by subscribing to this channel. Together, as a family of awakened souls, we can continue to unveil the mysteries of our past, to illuminate and co-create a future of freedom. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this sacred journey through the shadow. May the chronicle of the Draconian Empire serve not as a prophecy of doom, but as a map of the traps we must avoid.
May it inspire us to question everything, to seek the truth within ourselves, and to always remember that we carry in our blood the heritage of the stars and the power of the earth. We carry within us the potential for both tyranny and transcendence. The story of the Draconians is not just a story about an empire that seeks to control the galaxy. It is a story about the empire of fear that seeks to control your heart. And its final message is a choice between submission and sovereignty, between division and unity, between forgetting and remembering. The choice is ours, now and every day. May the unfathomable peace that surpasses all understanding, may the profound wisdom that guides your every step, and may the unconditional love that embraces all and heals all of the eternal ages illuminate and abundantly bless your path, now and forever. May it be so.
If you liked this content, hit the like button, share it with someone who might be interested in this topic, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.